South Carolina has not produced a good, consistent run game in the 3 years that he's been here. And obviously, if you want to compete in this league, you're going to have to be able to run the football at a consistent clip. And they just, made the emphasis this offseason, like, we're going to make sure this is better this year.
Yeah, and they got 3 guys who we know can go out there and run for a good chunk of yards. Obviously, if Rocket Sanders is healthy like he is expected to be for week 1, then it's like, okay, you got your main back. But if it's like, you need to use the other guys, you also have Oscar Attaway, who was very solid at North Texas, and then obviously Jawarn Howell from SC State had a good year last year. And even beyond that, it's not just those 3 guys. I mean, we forget DJ Braswell's still around, and Juju McDowell is going to be coming off injury. That's one guy I'm also interested to hear from today and see how his recovery's been and how he kind of has the perspective on. He's been around for a while now, and he knows the run game hasn't been great over the last few years. So I wonder how it's going to look this year. And I think Shane and the entire coaching staff, they've done everything they can to get the guys to go out there and, have better results. It's just coming down to, okay, can these players execute and, make it happen this year?
And Juju McDowell, going back to, Sean Elliott being on our show last week at Birdies with Beamer, he's somebody that he brought up a couple times kind of on his own volition, like mentioning him with liking his skill set and the ability to use him. And again, assuming that he's back and 100% healthy, I am going to be interested to see how they might utilize him, because he is kind of the forgotten man in the shuffle of that running back room, because you bring in Sanders, you bring in Attaway. A lot of people are excited about what Jawarn Howell is going to do coming up from South Carolina State, but nobody's really talking about Juju McDowell, even though he's the most senior guy there from a South Carolina perspective, and somebody, when healthy, has shown you flashes of things at times in his time here so far.
Yeah, and he's, a nice little complimentary back that you can have. I mean, like you said, he's an older guy, but he's 5'9", 184 pounds, so he's definitely smaller, but that also might work to his advantage because, he's got a lot of speed. He's kind of quick and, shifty. So I think having him as, I don't think he's going to be your every down back. I think that's kind of not his role this year. I don't know what the role would look like. Obviously, Rocket's probably your guy there. But when you need to mix guys in, especially in those early games in the year where maybe it's a blowout, you can get more guys touches. That's where I feel like Juju can really step up and fill in. And, there were times over the last few years where, he got his opportunity to shine. I think it was against like Florida last year or something. He played well, or some game. And then, he kind of took off from there. So I think that's kind of what you could see with him. And I feel like he could really go out here and make a big impact this year.
And I think that's the benefit as well of just having, again, assuming everybody stays healthy, so many viable options in that running back room that you didn't really have a year ago, where, okay, we figured out pretty quickly Kerryon Joyner wasn't going to work out at running back. Kept trying, but it just wasn't going to stick there. Mario Anderson came along and made a nice transition from Division II up to the SEC play, but you just didn't have a ton of depth there. You didn't have a lot of pieces that you could utilize, and this year's a complete 180 from that, where you have probably more than you need in that room, and a guy like Matthew Fuller may end up being a redshirt or something along those lines, but you have plenty of options and a variety of different play styles and body types that you can mix and match with to kind of figure out what exactly you want to do with that room this year.
And that's the nice thing about this team, is that we've spoken about it before. They have a lot more depth, it seems like, at every position. Like, offensive line, they have more guys this year, and barring injuries, they should be able to at least, put more guys in. But with running back specifically, they really do have like 5 to 6 guys, including Fuller, who really could go out there and be your every down back if needed. But that's not going to be the case. And as long as these guys all stay healthy, like they hopefully should, it's going to create a lot of competition and also a lot of opportunities for, guys to get reps, especially if like one guy's just not clicking. Like if Rocket has a bad game, you can go ahead and put someone else in maybe and find better luck. I think that's the nice part of what they got this year.
Reminder, it is the final day this week of the 107.5 The Game greatest Gamecock moments since the year 2000. We've had polls up each and every day this week. Yesterday's poll was very, very difficult to decide on. We spent an entire show yesterday in the 11 o'clock hour talking about it. Your final initial poll this week is up right now on the 107.5 The Game Twitter page. Check out these options, Jack. We have women's basketball's 2017 national championship, so the first for the program. The 2022 title, where they defeated UConn, so the second time they won the national championship. Football's win against Clemson on the road in 2022, and the DJ Swearinger hit from 2012. This one, tough. I don't know if it's as tough as yesterday, but but putting 2 national championships for women's basketball head to head, I might be splitting some hairs there.
There's always something special about the first title for South Carolina women's basketball. That's always special in any sport. With football, you know, it was coming off the heels of that Tennessee win, and South Carolina hadn't beaten Clemson since 2013, I believe. So it had been a while, and to do it on the road in the fashion they did was really cool. And then obviously DJ Swearinger, the hit that is still to this day talked about, and it's really cool. And then UConn, I mean, that's another great title, but
beating the dynasty of women's basketball and winning that title does
tough.
Hold a lot of weight too. So those are some tough options there. But again, go to 1075 The Game's Twitter account, vote on that. And again, we're going to take all the winners this week, put them in another poll next week, and we're going to crown our official winner on Monday, August the 12th. It is sponsored by Columbia Craft at 520 Green Street down in the Vista. We'll stick on the football conversation. I have a question to ask about Lenora Sellers and what we don't quite know about him up to this point. That's coming up. It is The Extra Point. He's Jack Belcher from Gamecock Central. I'm Tyler Head on your Thursday. Had to think about that for a second on the game. Welcome back in. Extra point. Tyler Head, Jack Belcher from Gamecock Central, along with you on your Thursday. I don't know how long this speed walking competition lasts. They've been going for 46 minutes now.
It goes 20 laps, I believe.
Oh, you've looked up the rules.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
it was on TV.
Okay.
So
Okay.
but
We're
yeah,
learning.
they're about. I think they were on they're about halfway. So I mean, they got probably like 8, 9 more laps to go, I think. So that's it's fascinating, to be honest. It's it's still mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, like I said, I feel like I learn about new Olympic competitions every single year, and I knew about this one already, but I'm glad I could educate you on speed walking.
Exactly. That is, it's very, very different. And yeah, I mean, I looked at some of the other sports. Like, I didn't even know, there's a sport called squash, which, I mean, you kind of explained it a little bit, but it's just.
Yeah, I mean, I was aware of squash. I didn't know it was an Olympic event until recently. But, there's and there's always more coming and going, depending on where the venue is.
Yeah.
I think baseball should be back in the Olympics by 2028.
Yeah, baseball and softball, I think, will both be back by then. And that I'm interested in seeing, especially since it's going to be in the U.S. and L.A.
Right.
So
Absolutely. One talk of camp, or probably one of the biggest talking points of Carolina football camp, which gets rolling this week, is obviously going to be what happens with Lenora Sellers when he officially gets named the starter and all that kind of stuff. And I was looking at something interesting yesterday because across the SEC, there's really not any quarterback competitions taking place this month. I mean, maybe you have a surprise at like Vanderbilt, but it seems like Diego Pavia from New Mexico State is probably going to be the starter there. But for the most part, everybody has their starter pretty much set in stone, and that includes here at South Carolina, even though, of course, he hasn't been officially named the starter for fall, but we'd be all pleasantly shocked if Robbie Ashford started the first game and Lenora Sellers didn't. He's one of 5 SEC starters to be brand new as a full-time guy. He is there with Garrett Nussmeier at LSU, Nico at Tennessee, Jackson Arnold at Oklahoma, and Brock Vandegrift at Kentucky. Nussmeier, Nico, and Arnold all have had prior starts to this year. All 3 of them actually started their bowl games. I think Nussmeier may have had a start or two a couple years ago when Jalen Daniels was injured as well. They had varying degrees of success. Nussmeier and Nico had pretty solid games. Arnold's game was a little bit rough in their bowl game against Arizona, but it gave you more of a tangible idea of what those guys can do, and it set expectations coming into this year. We are looking at everything with Lenora Sellers through the lens of the 4 passes that he threw last year and the handful of run opportunities they got, which did include a touchdown against Vanderbilt, but it's not a whole lot to go off of. How would our perception have changed of him, good or bad, if theoretically South Carolina made a bowl game last year, Rattler decided to sit it out, and we got Lenora Sellers in a full game capacity compared to just the handful of moments we saw last year?
Yeah, I think the perception would be probably different, right? I think we would have, I mean, it's a bowl game and it's one game, so it's like, I think whether it's good or bad, it's not the whole picture, and it's a really small sample size, but it's a little bigger than the 4 pass attempts and the few touchdowns he had on the ground last year. So I think it would have helped, especially if it's like against a quality, like maybe like a Big Ten opponent or an ACC opponent, whatever the case might be.
Right.
But we don't have that. So it's different. And I will say this about, Sellers compared to the other new starting quarterbacks in the SEC this year. At least to me, I feel like he has the highest potential of the group. That's not just South Carolina bias or anything like that. That's just, truth here. I think his passing game can be very good, potentially. We'll see what happens. It's a little more suspect, I think, compared to what he can do in the run game. And I think that's where he can separate himself is, if he has an opportunity to run, I think he's going to take it. I think we're going to see him maybe not do like Lamar Jackson type numbers here or anything, but have a really good dynamic and good split. And I feel like if his passing game is anything like what we saw last year, like if it's anything close to that deep ball he threw to, I think it was like Tyshawn Russell in the Furman game. I think it's going to be really fun to watch him. But yeah, we'll have to see what happens. But I think a lot of people are high on him, and I think rightfully so.
And I feel like, I don't know if this is an advantage or a disadvantage, the fact that we have not seen a full game's worth of Lenora Sellers, I think is tempering people's expectations a little bit, because, and this is a guy that's obviously local from Florence, and we've been hearing about for years now. And there's a lot of excitement about what he's going to be able to do. But let's say they did play a bowl game and he went out there and threw for 250 yards, ran for another 100, and scored 4 touchdowns. Like, the excitement level for him would be through the roof. And I think people would set expectations maybe a little bit too high going into a full season as a starter in the SEC. Or on the flip side of things, like I mentioned, Jackson Arnold didn't have the greatest game, for Oklahoma when they played their bowl game against Arizona. If he went out there and threw 2 or 3 interceptions and struggled to move the ball through the air, and maybe it wasn't as crisp running as we thought he was going to be, then I think people would be hitting the panic button like, I don't know, is this really our guy? You know what I mean? So maybe it's the what is it? Ignorance is bliss sometimes. So maybe the fact that we don't truly know allows you to be a little more positive without being too positive, and not being too downtrodden from having seen too much of him to think negatively going into the season.
And the real test for him, I think, is going to be, there's a lot of games on the schedule where it's going to be, it could be, either way for South Carolina. And I think the second game of the year against Kentucky, on the road in Lexington,
against another unproven quarterback.
Exactly. So I think, that's his first, Old Dominion is going to be a test. Obviously, Sun Belt, the Fun Belt,
Right.
I think the Sun Belt, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they had the most teams from maybe like the group of 5 in bowl games last year.
There's a lot of parity across the Sun Belt.
Yeah, so it's like, the Sun Belt, it's a worthy opponent, to be fair, from a non-conference standpoint. Could be better, but still. So I don't think until that second game against Kentucky on the road, hostile environment, first SEC game of the year, I think that's going to be the game where we kind of get like the first real judgment on Sellers, because it's against a quality opponent, and it really shows, okay, can this guy kind of step up when the lights are kind of bright? And if he does, I mean, people are going to be buying into that hype and hyping him up a little more.
And I'm glad that's not until week 2 as opposed to maybe playing Kentucky or North Carolina in week number 1, where you're jumping right into it against a worthy and stiff opponent, as opposed to, again, from a talent standpoint, Carolina's more talented than Old Dominion. They should be able to win that game, and if they lose that game, we got a whole different conversation we're going to be coming away from that, which I'm interested to see how you feel about your first reaction Monday once we get into the season, because the opinions and thoughts of people go one way or the other depending on how that game ends up going. But I'm glad you get to have that opponent first to shake off the cobwebs, get your feet wet a little bit before going on the road to Kentucky in week number 2.
Exactly. And I think the thing with a new quarterback, there's always going to be growing pains, right? And I think this year, the thing about this year compared to last year, like if Sellers was the starter last year, I don't think as many people would they'd still be high on him.
Sure.
But I think with the state of the offensive line and the inability to have a run game and everything, I think would have probably hurt how Sellers would have played last year. Luckily, in the time he did, it was fine. But I think this year with an improved O-line, an improved run game, all these different areas seem to be improved. I think that's really going to benefit him and just allow him to be more dynamic in the playmaking game. But I mean, it's going to be tough, and there's times where it's not going to be always easy, especially in SEC play. But if he is, I think the big thing, and I wouldn't always just measure it just on this and how a guy is, but if his touchdown to interception ratio is, obviously more touchdowns than picks, I think that's a good sign of progress right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we get 30 more days until we see him in action against Old Dominion in week number 1. Ultimate Season Ticket Giveaway has made its return once again. Go online to 1075thegame.com and register for your chance to win tickets to every South Carolina home football, baseball, men's and women's basketball games for the upcoming sports calendar year. And just like last year, we're going to take 3 finalists, bring out to our summer golf event at Charwood Golf Club in West Columbia at the end of August, and we're going to announce the overall winner there. Again, the Ultimate Season Ticket Giveaway on 1075thegame.com, sponsored by our friends at the Men's Clinic. NFL kicking things off tonight with the Hall of Fame game. I have one important question about not just this NFL season, but the future of the NFL as the Chiefs persist as the current dynasty in the league. That's coming up next. It is The Extra Point. He's Jack Felcher from Gamecock Central. I'm Tyler Head on your Thursday on the Game. Welcome back in. Extra Point. Tyler Head, Jack Felch from Gamecock Central along with you on your Thursday. Going to talk some hardwood coming up here in just a few minutes with Olympic basketball picking up another win yesterday against South Sudan. But first, I want to talk some NFL as, again, we do have the Hall of Fame game coming up tonight, 8 o'clock on ESPN between Chicago and the Houston Texans. Now, if you're looking to see Caleb Williams, he's not going to be playing, nor is C.J. Stroud. You're going to be watching a lot of guys battling for roster spots, essentially, as the Hall of Fame game typically is. But it is the return to football. I'm very interested to see the new kickoff format, and how that's going to work, and how the apparently the special teams coordinators have a bunch of different ideas and theories on how this is going to go down. So interested to see that in action for the first time and see if it's going to do what is intended to do to up kickoffs in the NFL, which have become kind of a joke these past couple of years because, I mean, like 80% of them end up in touchbacks.
Yeah, it's been kind of a wreck with kickoffs lately, and I am hoping taking beats from the XFL format works. And one thing, I was watching SportsCenter yesterday, and I didn't even realize this. I figured it was coming eventually, but yeah. Did you realize the NFL is, I think this preseason, they're going to try to start implementing with the chain gang, instead of using the chain gang, they're going to use like some technology from Sony to measure spotting of the ball and stuff?
It's called Hawkeye, and it's something that they are trying in the preseason, as the NFL typically do with the rule change. They'll put it in the preseason for a year, get however many games that is worth of a sample size, and then at earliest implement it the following season. And I feel like this is something that we could have been doing probably about 10 years ago, but it is interesting that it's finally coming along to this where the spotting of the ball can be down to almost the exact inch, where it's kind of been up to the discretion of the referees, which can vary from time to time, as well as marking first downs and those kind of things. The chain game is still going to be around as a backup option because inevitably technology fails at some point, so it's not going to look any different. But I mean, I am also interested to see how that, if we even notice that, you know what I mean? Or if it's something in the referee's ear, like, hey, you move it back half a yard or 40 yard, whatever it may be, or that was first down, not a stop. I'm intrigued by that as well.
Yeah, and all these rules are going to be, it's definitely going to be a big few years in terms of adjusting to all these new things and stuff. The onside kick rule is probably the one that I'm most maybe like displeased about, maybe just not. I just don't like the idea of it. And I think the general interpretation of it is you can't do an onside kick in the first 3 quarters for whatever reason. I guess if you're down by 20 points, oh well, you gotta maybe squib it. I don't know,
right.
But I think it's just strange how you have to let you have to publicly announce that you're going to onside kick before you do it in the fourth quarter. And I think it takes the surprise element out of the game, and it's just probably the one rule I'm not very happy about.
Yeah, and onside kicks have become pretty inefficient over the years anyway, so how much that's going to change the experience of a game, probably not a whole lot, but maybe that's a rule that they can tweak as time goes by. Important question to ask, are you sick of the Chiefs yet? They've won 3 out of the last 5 Super Bowls.
From my standpoint, it's not even about the Super Bowls. I mean, like the Super Bowls or whatever, but it's more so just the fact that every year it's like, and I think all AFC fans can kind of speak to this, but it's like, every year it's like you got a good team. You like whether you're the Bills, the Ravens, the Chargers, whoever it might be, the Dolphins. But there's always the Chiefs standing in the way. And it's like, it's kind of the same way I kind of feel about like the Astros, right? With the American League. It's like, regardless of what year it is, these teams still find a way to get the job done. And it's like, we're in the ripe age of Patrick Mahomes' prime. Like, he's not even 30 yet.
Which is insane.
Travis Kelce is like 33 or 34 now.
He's got a few more years.
He's got a few years left if he wants to. And just that whole team. And it's like they got, Xavier Worthy during the draft. So I'm sure that's going to be a huge move for them. And, of course, it came from a Bills, draft pick trade. So.
Right. And you can probably speak to this better than anyone, given the fact that you are a Bills fan. Can the Chiefs achieve the same level of hatred the Patriots had when they were at the height of their dynasty?
Yes and no. I think, from some perspectives, the Chiefs are very unlikable. And I think it kind of has to do with some of the swagger they have. Like they play confidently, and some people take that the wrong way. Like some people don't like the way Travis Kelce goes about his antics. I think I'm hit or miss on it. It depends on the day, but overall, I think he's good for the game. And then Patrick Mahomes obviously is just a generational talent, but he's a good dude overall. I think I don't know. It's just people hate winners and how consistently they win, but you have to respect it at the same time because it's like, they have a chance to go out there and three-peat this year. Now, do I want to see that? Absolutely not. But if it happens, it's like you got to just tip your cap to them. I mean, they've had such a good team and a great coach for so long. And I mean, this is a franchise that, before this whole, era of winning Super Bowls, they weren't doing this consistently. So they went through some rough years. So I think, it is, there's two sides to the coin, but overall, I think a lot of people just are sick of them.
And I think a lot of the hate when it came to the Patriots was not only their winning, and people do have to remember, they went 10 years without winning a Super Bowl. From 2004 to 2014 season, I guess, they didn't win any Super Bowls. You know what I mean? So they weren't, and they were consistently in the playoffs, AFC championships, that kind of stuff, but the Super Bowl wins were, there was a gap in between there. But I think it's the prickliness of Bill Belichick, the weirdness of Tom Brady, because as time went on, like Tom Brady was pretty inconspicuous when he came into the league, and when he was winning the first couple Super Bowls, never really thought anything of him. But the more we got into his life, the Giselle thing, some of the weird things that he does off the field, like I think people became to detest him a little bit more because of that.
Yeah.
As opposed to like the Chiefs, like Andy Reid is just lovable. You know what I mean? Like he's been around forever. I think a lot of people are happy he's finally seeing success. Outside of the weird hate that people have for like Brittany Mahomes, I don't think people really hate Patrick Mahomes all that much.
No, it's the sideshows that go on, and it's proven too. It's like Brittany and Jackson Mahomes are they are very
about Jackson.
and thankfully Jackson was kind of out of the spotlight this year. But it's like they do such like ridiculous things, like Brittany Mahomes throwing like champagne at people and talking smack to them, and then Jackson Mahomes infamously dancing on Sean Taylor's number. And it's just silly to think about that these things happen to a guy. He seems like a really good dude. Like I like Pat Mahomes the person and the player, but I obviously not as much the player. But it's like I kind of feel bad for the guy.
I do too. I think he'd be a cool guy to hang out with. The people in his life can tend to get him in a little bit more hot water than maybe we would like to be in. And there's obviously the Taylor Swift aspect of it too, especially this past season.
And that's another thing. People are sick of it.
And look, I don't blame the NFL. You have the biggest star in the entire world. You're going to capitalize on that. So anytime she's at a game, guess what? There's going to be a camera on her. And anytime you can leverage that, because people like my wife, who had no interest in watching a Chiefs game, were like, "Ooh, is Taylor going to be there? I'll watch." Like you are literally driving up viewer numbers because of her presence in the stadium. So I get it. But a lot of people got sick of that, especially at the Super Bowl. Because, I mean, we were calculating, can she make it to the Super Bowl from Tokyo after doing this show? Like, it becomes a lot to people at some point. And I do feel the tide's slowly starting to turn on the Chiefs. But getting to that Patriots level of hate, that's going to be a tall task.
Yeah, it's just they're going to have to keep winning. That's the thing. And I think, we saw it when Taylor and Travis got together last year. Once they start, like, it was a feel-good story at first, but, like, once you get to the AFC Championship and then the Super Bowl, and they're showing her every, every good play that, the Chiefs made at one point, it's like they show her. I think people got sick of that. And there's a lot of people who don't like Taylor Swift for whatever reason. I'll go on the record and say, I like her music and stuff, and I think she is, one of the greatest entertainers of all time. But it's like, it's a whole side, like, there's so many sideshows that go on with this team that, like, it's really fathomable that they keep winning every year. And I think that's kind of where people draw the line in the sand of, okay, I'm sick of this and I want to see these guys lose. Maybe not so much because of what they do on the field, but what goes on off the field is the big thing.
Well, they're once again the betting favorites to win the Super Bowl. So they're not going away anytime soon. That is for sure. We'll come back, wrap up today's edition of The Extra Point. USA men's basketball in action once again yesterday. Another victory in the group stage. We'll dive into that coming up. It is The Extra Point. He's Jack Felcher from Gamecock Central. I'm Tyler Head here on The Game.
turnover, lob it up.
That's nice.
Tatum
There you
flying
go.
home.
That's how you get your first two right there.
Largest lead of the
Welcome back in. Extra Point, Tyler Head, Jack Belch from Gamecock Central with you on your Thursday. I was called yesterday, Noah Engel and Dwayne Wade on NBC as the United States men's Olympic basketball team defeats South Sudan 103-86. And yes, that was Jason Tatum throwing down a jam after not getting any play in game number 1 against Serbia. Goes out there, gets 4 points, grabs 5 rebounds and 2 assists. And I thought Steve Kerr's comments after the game were interesting because, people clown the Tatum thing in game number 1 that he never got off the bench. Joel Embiid doesn't get to play in this game, but Kerr's like, hey, this is different. This isn't an all-star game. We're going out there and adapting to what these teams are giving us, and sometimes it may include a guy having to sit the bench. Sometimes it may include a certain guy that didn't play in the last game playing in the next one. It's continually moving pieces around to try and get to that gold medal.
And that does make sense. Like that's how it should be, right? This is not an all-star game. This is the Olympics we're talking about. This is, you're going for a gold medal. That means a lot. And it means a lot to wear the stars and stripes on your chest. With that said, I think it's very comical how, Tatum doesn't play a few nights ago, and then, Steve Kerr gets all the backlash for not playing him at all, and it's like, why are you not playing this guy? And Jason Tatum's a great player. Won the finals this year. Usual all-star. He's done a lot of good on the basketball court and does deserve to play. But I think it's just funny how that whole thing happened, and then the next game it's like he's a starter. I think it's just I get it, but it's like at the same time it's like if guys aren't playing, it's kind of like when your kid doesn't play in a YMCA basketball game, and it's like, why isn't my kid playing? And we have to have equal minutes for everyone. Well, that's not how it works. This is the Olympics we're talking about. Like,
right.
It's not for the faint of heart sometimes, and you have to play the best players. But with that said, I do understand why Steve Kerr has done what he's done with benching Joel Embiid, because you're getting more athletic forwards in there, scoring makers in there that can go out there and get buckets.
Our guy Mike Yuva weighs in and says, Kerr is a clown. You can quote me on that. I'm sure he has no internal bias for why he would say something like that.
No, probably not. Just general speculation as always.
One thing that was highlighted yesterday, and South Sudan, played U.S. close in that exhibition a couple weeks ago. 101 to 100,
1-point win.
Which made people think, oh man, this could be a tight game. But again, America ends up winning 103-86, and the depth that the U.S. was on full display yesterday when their bench outscored South Sudan 66-14.
It's crazy. And look, the U.S. had a big lead at one point early in the first half, and I'm thinking like, okay, they're going to pull away and win this game, by a lot. And that shouldn't come as a surprise just because it's the U.S. and they got a really stacked roster compared to everyone else, no matter how you draw it up. But, give credit to South Sudan. Like, whatever happened in that exhibition game clearly was not a fluke. Like, I know they lost by, 17 points, but, this game was a lot closer than the score might indicate. And there were some late buckets in, the final minute from, Anthony Edwards and stuff. So that kind of made the gap a little bigger. But, the U.S. so far so good. They haven't lost yet in legit Olympic play. So that's the key. Like, win however and win anyway. And it really is crazy that this bench they have, Kevin Durant, Bam Adebayo, Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Halliburton, Derek White, and Drew Holiday. And Joel Embiid when he's available to play. That's a really stacked bench, and honestly, really could be the starting 5, maybe, if you want to, for the Olympic team. Right.
And again, the U.S. obviously in pursuit of yet another gold medal and a couple more games to get to that point. They're going to end up playing Puerto Rico on Saturday in their next game. And if you want any indication of how ugly this one might get, Serbia, who the U.S. beat over the weekend in their first game of group play, demolished Puerto Rico 107-66. This one could get a little bit ugly on Saturday.
Maybe it could. Maybe it'll be like when in 1980 when the U.S. In hockey they got demolished by the USSR, and then they come back and win that next game unexpectedly. So maybe it'll be like that, but I highly doubt it. USA basketball at this point, like they should be going for gold every year, and anything less than that is just a really sour type of finish.
If you're keeping up with the medal tracker, the United States leading things in Paris right now, 31 medals in total. 31 gold medals in total, I believe, compared to 26 with France and 21 with China. No, that's total medals. Okay, sorry, this list is kind of funny here, but we still got another week and a half or so of the Olympics. But as expected, America leading the way once again.
Here's a good question. Now, it's more so hypothetical than anything, and just a little fun to have. But like, what are the odds, and predict a year maybe too, that we'll get like football in the Olympics, like tackle football?
Oh, I don't know if tackle football is ever going to go to the Olympics.
Flag might.
I don't think the NFL would sign off on their biggest stars playing tackle football in what would be the usual weeks of training camp, leading up to the start of the season. But there's a chance we could get it in the flag football in 2028 in LA. I don't know the exact procedures of getting sports out of the Olympics. I do know that is possible, and especially considering it's in America, there's a chance that it could happen. Now, does that stay as you travel to other countries? I don't really know, but I think there is a shot of it being in the Olympics in 2028, and we've had plenty of stars, Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, a lot of guys around the league that have said, hey, I want to be a part of that. If so, now how you whittle down an entire league to 7 guys, and maybe you do 14 if you have offense and defense, I don't know. But that would be very, very interesting to see play out.
Yeah, and with the Olympics adding baseball and softball back in 2028, I think that would be the perfect time to do something like flag football.
Sure.
Obviously, tackle's probably not realistic and probably will never happen. The only way I could see them actually doing that was if you maybe have guys that are like XFL type of guys maybe, or something, guys that are not in the NFL to play. But again, it might be tough to find other guys from around other countries and stuff.
That'll do it for today's edition of The Extra Point. Coming up next, it is the Garnet Trust Hour, brought to you by our friends over at Krantz Heating and Cooling. 10 o'clock, welcome in. It is now time for the Garnet Trust Hour, brought to you by our friends over at Krantz Heating and Cooling. Tyler Head, Jack Feltry still hanging out with us. And now welcome in Wes Mitchell on this Thursday. Happy first day of August. Happy football month, Wes.
It's here. Do we have a Colin Taylor style countdown still going?
It's easy. It's 30 days.
Man. So it was yesterday was 1 month officially. It's it's gonna be here before we know it. Like we're gonna get into camp. I feel like camp has kind of a little bit of a flow to it. So first 2.5, 3 weeks, everything in camp is like new. So there's plenty for us to talk about, plenty to write about, plenty for the fans to dive into, and it's all new. And for the players, it's the same. Like they're excited. They got the little boost from, all right, we're going to get to actually go out here and start getting ready for the season. And then about the midway point of the camp, you can see it in the players. Coaches will deny it, but maybe deep down they're feeling it too. I promise you we'll be feeling it. It's like, all right, we've hit all these storylines. The players are tired of talking about them. They're tired of hitting each other.
Yep.
Because, they get used to seeing the same plays. They're going up against the same people. And then there's a little lull where everything just slows down. So first 2 weeks fly by. Then there'll be a lull. And then when you start getting into game week, I feel like that's when you get that boost again. And obviously in a place like Columbia, you'll start to kind of feel it around town. But I think I've already, even as much as people were kind of disappointed with last season and you didn't quite have the buzz in this offseason, I've started, I don't know if y'all are the same way, but I've started, like friends or just people I see around town have started to like have the football conversation. And so I think it just feels different around here when we start to get into football season.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about all the storylines that are going to be playing out over the course of the next couple weeks at fall camp, and we've talked about this ad nauseum this entire offseason, was the so many unknowns and the position groups that are revamped, like running back and the new guys coming in, how you're going to split up reps, what the depth chart's going to look like. And I know you guys have been putting out your projected depth charts over the past couple days on Gamecock Central, and that could drastically shift over the course of the next couple weeks on who we think is going to be starters and who's going to be getting reps where.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be shocked if it didn't shift. Like, and even so, the point, I guess, or the exercise with that depth chart was kind of where are things at right now to the best of our knowledge. And there is quite a bit of opinion in there. I try to source it as much as I can, but some of it is opinion. If you're reading it, it's not anything the coaches have like sent out or that's been plastered on a board in the ops building and we've gotten a hold of. It is some opinion in there. But the approach wasn't necessarily to say, all right, this is what it's going to be in a month. It's more, what do we think it will look like on Friday? And then I think the beauty in that is that you can sort of say, all right, well, how have things changed or how will things change over the next 3, 4, or 5 weeks? And you can use it as a guide to kind of look back on what has shifted since the beginning. And, I think there are certain positions where you look at it and you say, it's probably not going to change. And then there's certain positions where, wide receiver, you literally could just take about 9 names and just shake them up in a hat and have a pretty good, almost as good of a shot as actually trying to list where they are right now, because I think that's a position that will be almost entirely decided by what happens in camp. Like some of these guys, I know all competitions are open. Coaches will tell you that. But it's like the back of the baseball card. Like if you have a resume, Nicky Manwari has a resume. At this point, DQ Smith has a resume. Jalen Kilgore's only in his second year. He has a resume. O.D. Fortune, the coaches really aren't even pretending like his job is up for grabs. They were saying in the spring, it's up for grabs opposite O'Donnell Fortune at corner. So some guys kind of have already, for the most part, solidified their spot. There are other spots, though, where you say, like, I think wide receiver is the most open competition on the entire roster. Now, I think O-line is another spot where there could be a good bit of movement, Jack, but at the same time, I do think there are at least a few spots on the O-line where you're like, okay, Vershawn Lee's probably the starting center. Beamer sort of alluded to that at Birdies with Beamer. Cason Henry, I think, is maybe, I don't want to say lockdown right tackle, but has a good shot to hold on to that. I think we have a good idea of who's in the running for those other spots. I think we even have a decent idea of who will run out there first on Friday, but maybe not completely. And I think that thing could shift certainly in the next month, and then certainly as the season progresses as well.
Yeah, you really hit on all the positions where, at least to me, and I think everyone that follows this team enough, those are the spots where competition's really going to be the greatest. And there's going to be so much competition this season, mainly because they have so much depth all around. And I think, with the offensive line, I think, like you said, as long as, Casey Henry's healthy and 100%, he should be a starter. Another name I would potentially keep an eye on, and I know they got 2 freshman starters back this year, but Marquis Anderson, I was talking to Lonnie Teasley last week, and, Marquis obviously missed all of last year with the knee injury, and he should be back in full go, and if he has a good camp, it wouldn't shock me if he's maybe at one of those guard spots. But, overall, I think it's great that you have competition. It really sets the tone. Think about how boring camp would be from, a media perspective and a player perspective if all the competitions were, not as big as they really are. It's great to have competition, and it really drives you to, have a good camp and set up what could hopefully be a successful season.
And Marquis Anderson falls into the category of one of those guys. And, Chris put out his list of top 10, questions when it comes to the offense for camp here, and it's who takes a leap. And we talk so much about the guys that are coming in from the transfer portal, Rocket Sanders, the entire cast of guys at wide receiver. But there are so many guys on this roster, and not only when it comes to offense, but defense as well, particularly when we talk about the secondary, of how much better they can get in year number 2 after having another entire offseason to work with their coaches and all that kind of stuff, because that is going to be just as important as the guys coming in is who gets better in their second year or third year, whatever it may be.
Yeah, and Marquis is what I kind of would coin as an X factor in the O-line group, in that, I didn't even list him on the depth chart for Friday, which tells you how many guys they have that are older than him and have more experience than him. But would it be a shock? Again, we're just going for who runs out there on Friday. If you were projecting the depth chart, like, hey, what's it going to look like week 1 when they put out, hopefully they still will, they put out a true official depth chart. Normally, I think it's on that Monday leading into the first game. That, to me, would look completely different than what you put together today. And so I think Marquis is one of those guys, if he's still getting his feet under him and, is back healthy but has some rust from missing so much time, then, you have guys in front of him that can completely be just fine. But if he hits the ground running, so to speak, and is back in the form that he was in, really this time last year as a true freshman, he was the guy, that we were hearing as the freshman go that was going to play on the O-line. And then he couldn't play, and Tro Ball kind of stepped into that role at guard. So if he can get back to his old self, he's the type guy who could completely change how you would structure this depth chart, just because I don't want to say it would come out of nowhere, because people who really pay attention know how high the staff is on him, but the injuries have just limited him so far to this point. So I think those guard spots, guys, like you have, you can kind of, I don't want to say you could, just like with a receiver, just throw him in a hat, but Ja'Kai Moore is back, has taken ownership. You would imagine, here's the way I kind of look at it, and this is assuming health for everyone. I think Ja'Kai, because of his leadership, because of the fact he stuck around, didn't transfer out, he's been here for a long time. I think on Friday, like you're giving him first right of refusal. Like you're rolling him out there with the ones on Friday. They cross-train all these guys, I should say, including the guards. I put him at left guard on the depth chart. That's where he's played every spot just about. But let's say he's your left guard on Friday. He's going to have to withstand an immense push from, if you just want to throw all the guards out there, Kamar Bell took reps with the ones during the spring. Of course, Tro Ball, we know he played last year. Torricelli Simpkins III, who can play center or guard, but appears to be slated to compete at guard right now because of Vershawn Lee kind of being entrenched at center. However, I do think TS3 is probably your backup center. Like, even if he's not listed with the centers. Like, I think he competes at guard, but if something were to happen to V. Lee, he slides over to center. So you're going to cross-train guys, I think. However, what happens if Marquis Anderson does take a step forward? One of those guys at guard all of a sudden is receiving a big push from somebody underneath them. And then the other thing, what if Josiah Thompson is ready at left tackle? Because then Tree Babalade all of a sudden is freed up to compete at right tackle or to compete at guard, which I actually think his body type maybe fits a little bit better there. So if I'm a guard, I'm looking around, I already got competition in my room. And then, here's Tree, who started a bunch of games last year as a true freshman, all of a sudden is in the competition as well.
Jack, I want you to take everything that Wes just said and ask Lonnie Teasley word for word all of that today.
Like, the way we talk about it, it's like it's night and day just how much more, at least to me, how much more exciting it is to talk about the offensive line. Like, barring any injuries in camp, there is a great chance, like, you have, like Lonnie had said to me last week, like, they are, because of how last year went with injuries, anyone that's in the two deep, that means you're preparing like a starter. So essentially, hypothetically speaking, South Carolina has 10 guys who could potentially go out there and be starters any given week. And it's just crazy. Like, if any of these freshmen have a really good camp, I mean, anything's possible. I mean, I wouldn't say, obviously you have your set in stone guys probably, like Vershawn Lee's probably going to start. You have your other guys, older, Ja'Kai Moore, that are probably going to start. But it is interesting to think about, like, South Carolina could potentially be running out like a Josiah Thompson or, moving Tree over to another tackle spot. It really is refreshing and nice to hear that maybe this year South Carolina will have the offensive line in place to, protect Lenore Sellers and give the run game a little bit of leverage to be able to run the ball a little bit more efficiently this year.
For the sanity of the fan base, I'm going to need you to knock on some wood after talking about injuries. There we go. Just make sure we got that covered.
Nice and loud. Nice
and loud. Make sure everybody knows that we're not trying to jinx anything here. It is the Garnet Trust Hour brought to you by our friends over at Krantz Heating and Cooling. Since we have Jack here, we're going to talk a little bit of men's basketball. So we did hear from Lamont Paris a little bit earlier on this week at the men's open practice as they get set to go full go into the season coming up here in a couple of months. It's the Garnet Trust Hour here on your Thursday on the Game.
All right, guys, let me tell you about our friends over at Classic Roofing. Hit up my friends Joe Reeder and Max Sawyer, 803-590-7870, or head on over to classicroofingsc.com for more information on their services and for a free estimate. Obviously, it is summer in the South, so lots of storms hitting the area. Let them check out your roof if you think you might have some damage before you file an insurance claim. You may not need to actually file a claim, and you don't want to file one for no reason. They're going to give you an honest assessment, just like they did for me and my family, instead of just telling you to blindly file one. Again, that phone number is 803-590-7870, or head on over to classicroofingsc.com. You're going to get more information about their services, and you can get a free estimate so they can come out to your home and give you a little bit more information about the life of your roof. Again, that's our friends over at Classic Roofing.
ways, there are a lot of similarities just in terms of, I think, preliminarily how they've gotten along and worked well with one another. Just there's a lot of synergy that way. It's early. The Bahamas trip really helped with that last year, and so we won't have the benefit of doing that and getting those 10 full practices in those couple games. But this group has shown signs of real commitment to, and it's natural, it's not a forced thing, just a real commitment to and attentiveness towards one another.
Welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour, brought to you by our friends over at Krantz Heating and Cooling. Tyler Head, Jack Beltry, Wes Mitchell along with you on this Thursday. That was Lamont Paris at the open practice for men's basketball the other day, talking to the media about, this team this year as we are 100 some odd days from the 2024 season getting rolling. And, last year, going into year number 2 of Lamont Paris, expectations not super high. We talked plenty about those, projections of them finishing at the bottom of the SEC, which the team used as the motivating factor to prove people wrong, which they certainly did by making it all the way to the NCAA tournament before getting bounced by Oregon in the first round. This year's going to be different because people are going to be expecting the team to be good this year. They're going to be projected, I don't know, probably somewhere around the top 5 in the SEC, depending on, what the other teams are looking like going into the year. So they cannot play the chip on the shoulder card by any means going into this season.
I slightly disagree with you on that, actually, just with the projections aspect of it. Because, I still feel like there are going to be, I think media members out there, people that did not really watch this team super closely like we do all the time, that might still overlook South Carolina. And it wouldn't be surprising. I'm not saying like they're going to be picked to finish, dead last in the SEC again. That I don't expect to happen. But I would be shocked if they were picked top 5 in the SEC. I think they can finish there, but maybe somewhere like in the 8 to 9 range, especially with the conference getting bigger now with Oklahoma and Texas joining the fold. But I still think there is a little chip on their shoulder just to prove that they can be a consistent force moving forward, and it's not just a one-year fluke or anything like that.
Yeah, I kind of feel like fluke is actually the word I was thinking of. I think that not here locally, but from a national standpoint, and there are just programs that are considered to be more established than South Carolina's that by default, I think when they look, South Carolina lost, B.J. Mack, Talon Cooper, Michi Johnston, they're going to kind of blindly get picked in the bottom half of the conference anyway again, I think. So if I'm South Carolina, I'm doubling down on the chip on the shoulder card just because I'm like, look, we went to the tournament last year and we're still not really being respected. Like if I'm Lamont, I'm using that, like coaches use that for like squeeze every last ounce out of that thought, I think. So I do think this is a team that the more you hear, the more you're like, man, they could surprise again, even as a much different looking team. While we got you, Jack, I want to get into some of your actual observations from being at practice this week. First of all, I think that was a really good move to like let the media out there and give y'all some open access to like truly watch and see it with your own eyes. There are a lot of newcomers on this team. So instead of just hearing about them, you're actually getting to go see them. What, from a big picture standpoint, what was maybe your just most, I guess, apparent or most new observation from what you saw from this team in person, actually seeing them on the court?
Yeah, got to give a big shout out to South Carolina men's basketball for having the media out there first off. Like, they don't have to do that during the summer by any stretch. Like, they could just, have it be closed practice all the time and stuff. But the fact that we were able to go there and see the whole entire practice, too. It's not like football where you're there for a few, like 30 minutes maybe, and that's it. Whole practice, start to finish, you got to see everything, and that really helped, I think, me specifically, because, I've heard all about these new guys joining the team and stuff, but I haven't gotten to see them play in real time yet, and I think that was really good to see. So kind of going into my observations a little bit, I think first off, this team they're going to look a lot different than last year, but in a good way. I think they have a lot more size this year. I think that was an issue that, I think a lot of people saw specifically in those final few games of the year when you're looking at against Tennessee and Auburn and Oregon. those teams had really good bigs, and South Carolina, they had bigs, but they couldn't really match the physicality that those types of guys bring. So I think, bringing in like a Nick Pringle, Jordan Butler, Oku Federico is going to join the team in September, and then obviously you get, Colin Murray-Boyles back for another year, as well as BBV. I think that's all going to play really well towards the inside game being a lot better, as well as being a little more physical there. From a guard standpoint, you brought it up. I mean, Talon Cooper's not here anymore. Michi Johnson's not here as well. But you have a guy like Jamari Thomas who, like I said, did not really know much about before this practice. Seeing him in person and stuff, stats only tell you so much. Seeing how a guy plays is completely different. This guy is, I guess the term you could use is maybe like a ball hawk. I mean, he plays really well on both sides of the court. He's very aware, if I'm being honest. He, picked off a few passes in practice and took it the other way. And I think that's really going to play well at that guard spot. I think he probably has one of the guard spots probably locked up for starters. The other guard spot I feel like is kind of up for grabs. We can maybe see Jacoby Wright move into a starting role, but then again, I kind of like him as that sixth man off the bench. Maybe you see Cam Scott fill in. He looked really good as a freshman, and he's been adjusting well. One name I'm very high on, and I think he definitely could be a potential starter this year at that guard spot, would be Arden Conyers. He didn't play last year, sat on the bench as a red shirt, and learned a lot. And we've known the talent's always there, but it's like, we really haven't gotten to see it on full display. I mean, in practice, he was hitting his shots, getting to the rim, making the tough inside plays, really doing a lot of what you want, from a guy that, has a lot to prove. And I think he has a really good chance to be one of those guys that, definitely makes an impact this year, but potentially starts. I would love to see it. I think that would be a really, big step for South Carolina.
I thought it was very telling what Paris had to say about Conyers his previous press conference when he spoke in the summer kind of for the first time and was giving a little update. I love how he gives detailed answers about it's very little coach speak. It's more like here's where things are. And that little bit about, hey, we thought after 2 years that Conyers would be like a household name in the SEC, but he maybe is a little bit ahead of schedule. I mean, I think this kid is definitely on track or even ahead of schedule on track to be one of these sort of a little bit under the radar guys that they've been able to find and go get and bring in. But obviously here locally, and you talked about him a little bit, but Cam Scott is the big name. He's the high 4-star guy, one of the most highly recruited guys they've landed since Paris got here, I guess only behind Gigi. What more can you tell us about just his playing style and what you saw from him? Does he stand out among the crowd yet in that, that guy was super highly recruited?
He looked very good. I will say that. Standing out amongst the crowd, it's tougher to say because they have a lot of good, pieces on this team, and I'm not sure what his role will specifically look like yet, just because he is a freshman. I definitely think he's going to play a good bit this year. Whether he starts or not, I'm not sure. But he did look good. I will say that. The one thing about him, I think that's always been the discussion is a little bit of his size, right? I think he's got a little more weight to potentially put on at some point, and that was something I asked him about. But he feels like he's in a good spot to go out and make an impact right now, the way he is. But I do think there's a lot of hype around him. The local kid, flipped to Carolina in the recruiting process. And again, 4 stars. I mean, South Carolina men's basketball, the history doesn't exactly speak to, high-profile talent year in and year out. I mean, getting Gigi Jackson a few years ago was, one of the biggest, commitments this program's, ever had. So getting another in-state guy like that is really big, and he's looked good so far. And again, it is tough to stand out from the crowd just because there are so many really great players. I mean, there wasn't a play that I saw that was oh my gosh, that is insane. Cam Scott needs to be a starter day one just because of that. But he's doing all the things right. He, hasn't been super flashy yet, I don't think, but he's getting the job done, which I think is a more important thing in basketball.
And again, that season will be here before we know it, and certainly hoping for another good year, much like last season was for South Carolina men's basketball. We'll come back, continue to roll on with today's edition of the Garnet Trust Hour, brought to you by our friends at Krantz Heating and Cooling. Tyler, Wes, and Jack along with you on your Thursday here on The Game.
Yeah, like Tyler said, Krantz Cooling and Heating, the sponsor here, presenting sponsor of the Garnet Trust Hour here on the game. Give them a call or go online, krantzcooling.com. That's Krantz with a K, cooling with a K, or call them 803-590-8775. As you know, Columbia heat is like no other. You want to make sure that not only is your home staying cool, but that you have an efficient AC system at your house. They specialize in pretty much everything involving cooling and heating. That could be AC repair, AC installation, heating repair, heating installation, preventative maintenance. You want to make sure that you're covered in terms of not having that big cost down the road. You want to make sure you take great care of your HVAC system. Do what we do here on the game and call our friends at Krantz Cooling and Heating. Again, that phone number, 803-590-8775, or Krantz Cooling, that's Krantz with a K, cooling with a K.com.
Welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour, brought to you by Krantz Heating and Cooling. Along this Thursday on the game, Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, Chris, Jack Felcher.
Do I resemble Chris Clark?
Listen.
Chris is out there.
I'm so used to saying our three names together. Adding your name in the combination of the three is a new thing, so gotta get used to that.
Jack, beat him up. That was just rude, right to your face.
Now,
rude.
I have incorrectly identified Wes and Kristen here as well, so you're not alone in that regard. I want to remind people, and we'll dive into this a little bit more at the top of the next hour, the greatest Gamecock moment since 2000.
We have 4 new ones.
We have 4 new ones. And
yes.
Like I said, we'll get into it more at 11, but it's another tough choice like it was yesterday. Today's the last day of the initial polls. We'll take the 4 winners this week, run another poll next week, and we'll talk about our winner overall coming up on Monday, August the 12th, sponsored by Columbia Craft at 520 Green Street down in the Vista. Yesterday was tough. I mean, we spent the entire show talking about those 4 options, and I didn't even look to see what the final results were, but it's gotten increasingly tougher as the week's gone along.
Yeah, it was fitting. We had Ace Sanders on yesterday.
That did help.
But I'm guessing the win over Bama won, but I have not looked.
I will double check on that. But I would assume it was leading pretty heftily by the time we got out at noon yesterday. But I'll see on that. I did want to bring this up. I saw officially yesterday at Southern Cal, Reggie Bush's Heisman has officially made its way back into the building after, a decade of us pretending that it didn't happen, and him being scrubbed from the record books that can now officially recognize one of the best seasons we've ever seen from a college football player, and the highlights speak for themselves, officially returning where we can actually talk about it.
I think, what I think is fascinating about sports, so growing up or even just being in college, the players that were apparently like stars, but came before your time of watching football, you always the older people in your lives would be like, oh, man, this guy was an absolute freak show when he played, blah, 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 blah. And you'd kind of roll your eyes because you didn't get to experience what that person did, and you didn't really maybe give them the credit they deserved. So I'm wondering, Jack, how old are you?
I'm 24.
Did you get the Reggie Bush experience? Do you recall watching him?
Reggie,
you would have been young.
I was born, but
I was born.
Yeah, I was born. I was alive and well.
Wait, so you were born in 2000?
2000.
Okay.
So Reggie was what?
No, you didn't.
03 to 05. No, I did not. I didn't probably start watching college football like now, probably until maybe 2010. Probably around the time when South Carolina was really getting good and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. But I mean, I've seen the tape now. I mean, Reggie's. Well, it took long enough to get it back to him.
I think there's you can watch a sport as a kid, with your dad or whatever, but I don't think you're cognitively aware of what's happening and who's good and who's not.
No.
Probably till you get around 8, 9-ish, 10 years old, probably.
That's probably where I still have memories of watching sports and stuff. It's just anything before that is really vague and stuff. But I mean, thankfully there is plenty of highlight reels out there on YouTube that show just how good Reggie was. And I mean, like I said, it really did take a long time to get this thing back to him, and it shouldn't have even been. I get it for the time because of all these things that are going on now with NIL and stuff weren't in place 20 years ago. But now that they're here and stuff, all the wrongs of the past should, for the most part, I feel be corrected.
Reggie Bush at Southern Cal at the height of their dominance, obviously being in LA and everything, with how marketable he was, the money he could have made.
He would have racked.
Insane.
Easily.
But yeah, he was an experience, man. He was probably the flashiest player in the game at the time. And even if you didn't care about Southern Cal at all, if they were on TV out here, you were probably watching if your team wasn't playing. And, he was – I still remember, though, that Southern Cal team. I remember ESPN doing a big, story and debate about is this the – where does this team rank – among the all-time teams? Is this the best team in college football history before the season was over? And then one Vince Young, who also would have racked up on the NIL side, goes off and beats them in the national championship, or the BCS championship, you would say at the time. And so they didn't even win the title that year. And there was discussion about, is this the best assembled team of all time? Because they had Lindell White as their other back.
Mm-hmm.
So
he was the bruiser.
that was the 1-2 punch. Matt Leinart was the QB. Who was their top receiver?
Did they have Palomalu at the time too?
That was
that earlier?
That was a few years earlier.
Okay.
Because he was, I forget what year he got drafted, but he was in that early. He was a part of that early success that Carroll had there. But yeah, I don't think he was a part of that specific team.
It's crazy that we don't. We talk about Reggie Bush and Lendell White and Matt Leinart. It's crazy that we don't talk about like more big name guys from that USC team that was so good. It's just the key players. It's like the Vince Youngs from Texas and the other guys that really paint the picture of what happened in that national championship game.
And I pulled this up on Pete Carroll's bio page here. Let me read to you the run of success they had from 2002 to 2008. Win totals 11, 12, 11, 12, 11, 11, 12. Bowl games, orange, rose, 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 and then 2 national championships in that time frame as well.
It's crazy. And
and maybe because of the NCAA investigation and all that kind of stuff, we don't talk about them nearly as much as I think as we should when we talk about like great eras of teams in college football history, because they were literally among the standard for a long time. I guess that was kind of the rise of the SEC as well that maybe kind of overshadowed it as it got towards the end of Carroll's run. But like, man, Southern Cal was special.
Yeah, and once you get kind of after that season, because that's the midway point of the 2000s, once you get to 06, I think was the year Tebow won the Heisman and stuff. So
07.
Yeah. So from that point on, it's like the SEC really did take off. But it's kind of interesting when you look at USC now and Southern Cal for reference. They went 8-5 last year, and you're thinking a few years ago when they won that Rose Bowl game against Penn State, and it's like they had a really great year, and it's like they're gonna take off and kind of get back to relevancy. It's kind of like the Texas. Like if Texas weren't around, I feel like USC would be that team that everyone pins on, being like, "Oh, is USC back? Like when are they kind of returning to form?"
Southern Cal back.
Yeah, Southern Cal. Maybe.
See, I'm supposed to make that mistake. You're not supposed to make that mistake.
Yeah, I call it like it is, but
Southern Cal, Jack.
Southern Cal.
You got to know your audience, buddy.
I know. But look, I mean, it's just you would think at this point, like Southern Cal with Lincoln Riley, all these big names, the market they have there in LA, it's better than anything else.
Right.
They should be year in and year out contenders, and they're going in the Big Ten. It's gonna be tough for them to win, but I don't know.
Speaking of them going to the Big Ten, we can now say Reggie Bush is a Big Ten legend, right? Retroactively speaking.
No.
Something really funny happened yesterday that I want to talk about of retroactively assigning somebody to a conference they never competed in. We'll hit that coming up. It is the Garnet Trust Hour. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, Jack Beltry with you on your Thursday, brought to you by Krantz Heating and Cooling here on The Game.
25 meters left for Ledecky to make more history. Won the gold in Tokyo. Is going to back it up again here in Paris. And the greatest swimming machine we've ever seen rolls on to another gold here in Paris with a new Olympic record.
Welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour, brought to you by our friends over at Krantz Heating and Cooling. Tyler, Wes, and Jack along with you. That was the call yesterday in the women's 1,500-meter freestyle in the Olympics. Katie Ledecky dominated this. She won by a huge, she was literally chilling at the finish line, waiting for everybody else to finish their final lap. So she gets another gold medal. No surprise there. Katie Ledecky is an amazing swimmer, holds every single conceivable record there is. The Atlantic Coast Conference tweeted this out. Ledecky bringing home the medal, hashtag accomplished greatness, hashtag Olympians made here, with her picture and the Stanford logo below it. Katie Ledecky never swam in the ACC. But this is the new reality of college sports now. We can retroactively say Katie Ledecky, ACC legend.
No. Disagree.
You know what really ticks me off, though? When somebody posts something on social media that everybody disagrees with, it gets exactly what the person who posted it wanted, because that thing has literally millions of views now from so many people telling them how wrong they are.
Exactly.
So this is a classic troll job where
they know what they're doing.
If you ignore someone who's trolling, they don't get their way, but you can't help yourself. So you tell the ACC how stupid they are, and then they get exactly what they wanted, which was brand power.
And at their year-end social media numbers, they can say, hey, look at all this engagement we got from something like this, which community notes, which is so great on Twitter, did come to the rescue.
Hilarious.
Ledecky graduated from Stanford in 2021. Stanford was still in the Pac-12. So for those that didn't know.
It's accurate, so.
Hey, we have to remember the Pac-12, guys.
We do.
It happened.
I mean, it still kind of exists.
No, it does not exist.
The name still exists, but the way it was does not.
Yeah.
It's the Pac-2 in reality. Two-pack, yes.
How just mind-numbingly crazy is it that the Pac-12 could not get a better TV deal? Like when things were still good. Like how many games that people would have watched were lost just because the Pac-12 network was nowhere to be found?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't know if you had to pay extra for it, if you had to have a certain
It was in
TV
the higher
provider.
packages.
Okay, because
you couldn't watch
I've
it.
never had a TV service that featured the Pac-12 network.
No, it was like you'd go on like DirecTV and stuff, and this is before like YouTube TV and stuff really came into the fold. But it's like, DirecTV, you go on there and you see Pac-12 network, you're like, oh, I'm gonna click on USC.
Looks like a pretty good game.
Yeah, Southern Cal versus Washington. Nope, you can't watch it. It's crazy, and it's the Pac-12 brought to you by the Mountain West. That's kind of how I look at it, because eventually I feel like unless the Pac-12 can get some of those Mountain West teams to join their conference or other teams from around that Pacific area, it's going to be very hard for the Pac-12 to survive much longer, because they're kind of going off of playing with the Mountain West teams this year and probably for the foreseeable future.
Well, and they have a period of time to figure it out, because again, this collapsed all at once last summer. So Oregon State and Washington State just kind of got left hanging because Pullman, Washington, and Corvallis, Oregon aren't exactly the most desirable destinations when you're talking about bringing in new media markets. So they've got a little bit of time. There's a grace period when it comes to what a conference can be with only 2 members to kind of figure it out. So within the next couple of years, I imagine either they'll integrate with the Mountain West or find new homes, maybe if the Big 12 wants to expand or something like that. But yeah, it's definitely sad that we don't get Pac-12 after dark anymore. I guess maybe if you want to watch Boise and Oregon State play at 11 o'clock, you still got that, but it's not going to be the same.
Now, let me bring up a point that, this really puts into perspective just what's changing. So, all right, normally, the rivalry games with Washington's the Apple Cup and Civil War. Civil War this year between Oregon and Oregon State is September 14th. And with the Apple Cup, it's also September 14th. So those matchups normally take place, the last week of the regular season. But now
props
it's
to them
week
for
3.
Still keeping those going, though.
Yes, they have to keep it going. It's insane. And the fact it's going to be week 3, it's going to be definitely an adjustment and take a lot of getting used to. So, but it's sad seeing the Pac-12 fizzle out the way it has.
It's so funny on like College Football 25 because you can move around conferences like you were able to do in some of the previous EA games, and you just go to that Pac-12 and it's just 2 there. And like you could, the good thing about the game, you can rebuild the old Pac-10 or Pac-12 or whatever it may be if you want to. But yeah, it's just kind of, it's sad. And I'm interested to see how this plays out and what might possibly be able to be done in the future with that conference, or what's left of it at least.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, guys, as much as I do hate the changes, I am kind of excited about the Big Ten. Like, there are some fascinating storylines that come along with these changes.
No, absolutely. I think everybody's going to be tuned into that Oregon and Ohio State game coming up early on in the season as one of the biggest ones in all of college football. We will jump back in to the conversation about football coming up in the 11 o'clock hour with the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. We'll also take a look at today's options for the greatest moments in Gamecock sports since the year 2000. And once again, it is a very, very interesting list that we have coming up today. Chris Clark will jump here with us in the next hour here on your Thursday on The Game.
All right, guys, before we turn the page to the GC Takeover, let me tell you about our friends over at Gold Line Framing. My friends Kendall Walsh, Johnny James, they're going to take great care of you and any and all of your custom framing needs, just like they do for me. That could be diplomas, original artwork, canvases, jerseys, flags. Maybe you've got a signed print that you want to take to the next level. They can handle any and all of that for you. Gold Line Framing has been in business for over 20 years, so just head on over to 511 12th Street, West Columbia. In store, you can check out their art gallery, home decor, furniture, and gift items. If you have questions or if you want to go ahead and set up your custom framing, give them a call today. 803-739-1337 is that phone number. Or if you want some ideas about some of those gifts or some of the stuff they've done in the past, follow them on Instagram at Goldline Framing SC. Again, hit up our friends at Goldline Framing for any and all of your custom framing needs at 803-739-1337.